The locker room smelled of sweat and cheap body spray. A haze of steam curling from the showers like ghosts of the game we'd just won. I stood by my locker, heart still pounding from the final play, when Jake's laugh cut through the noise sharp. Teasing. Alive. He was always like this. My best friend. My teammate. The guy who made every moment feel like a dare. Jake slung his towel over his shoulder, his grin wide as he sauntered over, his dark hair damp and sticking to his forehead. Yo, Ethan, you gonna stand there daydreaming or help me celebrate? His voice was all mischief, the kind that had gotten us into trouble since we were kids stealing sodas from Coach's cooler. At 18, we were seniors, kings of our small-town Ohio high school football team, untouchable in our little world of Friday night lights. But tonight, something felt different. Maybe it was the way his hand lingered on my shoulder, his fingers brushing just a second too long. Or maybe it was the way his eyes held mine, like he was searching for something he didn't know how to name. Jake was straight, everyone knew it. The guy dated cheerleaders, flirted with anything that moved, and wore his charm like a second skin. But those moments, the ones where his playful nudges felt like something more, had been piling up lately, and I couldn't shake the heat they left behind. I'd known I was gay since I was 14, a secret I buried under every tackle, every sprint, every forced laugh at Jake's crude jokes. In our town, being different wasn't just hard, it was dangerous. I'd seen what happened to kids who didn't fit the mold, whispered slurs, cold shoulders, or worse. So I kept my head down, my feelings locked away, especially when it came to Jake. He was my best friend, the one who'd been there through my parents' divorce, through the nights I'd sneak out to escape my dad's drunken rants. Losing him wasn't an option. Earth to Ethan, Jake said, snapping his fingers in front of my face. He was close now. Too close. His bare chest glistening with sweat. You good? Man. You're acting weird. His tone was light, but his eyes weren't. They flickered with something concern. Maybe. Or something heavier. I'm fine. I lied, turning to shove my gear into my bag. My hands shook, and I cursed myself for it. Jake didn't know. He couldn't know. But the air between us felt charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. The locker room was emptying out, the other guys heading to the parking lot, their voices fading. It was just us now, the hum of the fluorescent lights and the drip of a leaky shower. Jake leaned against the locker next to mine, his arm brushing mine as he crossed them. You sure you're good? He asked again, quieter this time. You've been off all week. I wanted to tell him. God, I wanted to spill it all, the way his laugh made my chest ache, the way I'd catch myself staring at him during practice, the way I hated myself for it. But I couldn't. Not here. Not in this town. Not with him. Just tired. I muttered, zipping my bag with more force than necessary. Jake didn't buy it. He never did. Bullshit, he said, stepping closer. His voice dropped, almost a whisper. Talk to me. Ethan. What's going on? I froze. His hand was on my arm now, firm but not rough, and I could feel the warmth of his skin through my sleeve. My pulse raced. A traitor giving me away. I opened my mouth to deflect, to make some dumb joke. But then he did something I didn't expect. He leaned in, his face inches from mine, his breath warm against my cheek. You know you can tell me anything, right? He said, and for a second, I swore his voice cracked. The world stopped. My heart was a drum in my chest, loud enough I was sure he could hear it. I looked at him, really looked at him, his sharp jaw, his dark eyes, the way his lips parted like he was about to say something else. And then, like a reflex, I pulled back. I gotta go, I mumbled, grabbing my bag and bolting for the door. Ethan. Wait, he called. but I was already halfway down the hall, my sneakers squeaking on the tile. I didn't stop until I was outside, the cold October air hitting my face like a slap. I leaned against the brick wall, gasping, my mind a mess of what-ifs. What if he knew? What if he didn't? What if that moment meant nothing or everything? I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every second of that locker room scene. Jake's voice, his touch, the way he looked at Miah was too much. I'd spent years building walls around my heart, but he was tearing them down without even trying. And the worst part, I didn't know if he was just being Jake playful, reckless, oblivious, if he felt it too. The next morning, I avoided him. I skipped our usual pre-practice meetup at the diner, ignored his texts, and kept my head down in the halls. But Jake wasn't the type to let things slide. By lunch, he cornered me outside the cafeteria, his hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. You gonna tell me what's up? Or do I have to drag it out of you? He asked, his tone half teasing, half serious. I wanted to run again, but his eyes held me in place. It's nothing, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Just stuff at home. He didn't believe Miah could see it in the way his jaw tightened. But he didn't push. Instead, he stepped closer, his voice low. Whatever it is, I'm here. Okay. You don't get to shut me out. I nodded, my throat tight. I didn't trust myself to speak. Because the truth was, I wasn't just shutting him out. I was shutting out the part of me that wanted to grab him, to tell him everything, to risk it all. And I didn't know how much longer I could keep it locked away. The rest of the week was a blur of avoidance and guilt. I dodged Jake at practice, kept my answers short, and buried myself in schoolwork to keep my mind off him. But every time I saw him laughing with the team, tossing a football in the quad, or just walking down the hall with that easy confidence in me, chest tightened like a vice. Friday night's game was our biggest yet, a rivalry match against a team from the next town over. The stands were packed, the air electric with cheers and the sharp scent of popcorn. I was in the zone, channeling every ounce of my confusion into the game. Jake, as always, was a force of nature, dodging tackles, throwing passes like he was born for it. We won, 28-21, and the crowd roared as the final whistle blew. In the locker room, the team was wild, high-fiving and shouting over the music blasting from someone's speaker. I was at my locker, peeling off my gear, when Jake appeared, his face flushed from the win. Hell of a game, man, he said, clapping me on the back. His touch sent a jolt through me, and I flinched before I could stop myself. He noticed. Of course he did. His smile faltered, and he tilted his head, studying me. You're still acting weird, he said, his voice low enough that only I could hear. What's the deal, Ethan? I shrugged, focusing on my shoelaces like they were the most important thing in the world. Just tired, I said again, the same weak excuse I'd been using all week. But Jake wasn't having it this time. He grabbed my wrist. Not hard, but firm enough to make me look at him. Stop lying to me, he said, his eyes searching mine. You think I don't notice when my best friend's avoiding me? Talk to me. My heart was in my throat. The locker room was still loud, but it felt like we were the only two people in it. I could smell his cologne, feel the heat of his hand on my skin. For a second, I thought about telling him, spilling it all. Consequences be damned. But then I remembered where we were. Our town wasn't kind to people like me. I'd heard the slurs tossed around in the halls, seen the way guys like Tommy Reed got ostracized for less. Jake might be my best friend, but even he had limits. I can't, I said, pulling my wrist free and turning away. I just can't. I expected him to push, to follow me like he always did. But he didn't. He just stood there, watching me grab my bag and leave. The silence between us was louder than the team's celebration. That night, I couldn't sleep again. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. "You're freaking me out. Man, whatever it is, we'll figure it out. Just talk to me." I stared at the screen until it blurred, my thumb hovering over the reply button. But I didn't know what to say. How do you tell your best friend you're in love with him when you're not even sure he'd still be your friend after? The next day was Saturday, and I was supposed to meet Jake at his place to watch game tapes. I almost bailed, but I knew he'd show up at my house if I didn't go. So I dragged myself over, my stomach in knots. His mom let me in, her smile warm as always. "He's in the garage," she said, pointing me toward the back. Jake was there, messing with an old punching bag his dad had set up years ago. He was shirtless, his muscles flexing as he threw lazy punches. When he saw me, he stopped, wiping sweat from his brow. "Didn't think you'd show," he said, his tone neutral but his eyes sharp. "Yeah, well, you'd hunt me down if I didn't," I said, trying for a joke. It fell flat. He didn't laugh. Instead, he stepped closer, his hands still wrapped in athletic tape. "You gonna tell me what's going on? Or are we just gonna keep doing this dance?" I swallowed hard, my mouth dry. "It's not that simple, Jake." "Then make it simple," he said, his voice rising. "You're my best friend, Ethan. You don't get to just shut me out without a reason." "I'm not shutting you out," I snapped, louder than I meant to. "You don't get it. Okay. You don't know what it's like to." I stopped, my breath catching. I'd almost said it. Almost. Jake's eyes narrowed. "To what?" he pressed, stepping even closer. "To what, Ethan?" I couldn't look at him. My hands were shaking, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. "Forget it," I muttered, turning to leave. But Jake grabbed my arm, spinning me back to face him. "No, you don't get to run away again. Tell me." And then it happened. The words I'd kept locked away for years came spilling out, raw and unstoppable. "I'm gay, Jake. Okay, I'm gay, and I'm in love with you. And I know you're straight. And I know this ruins everything. But I can't keep pretending it's not true." The garage went silent. Jake's hand was still on my arm, but his grip loosened, his face unreadable. My chest heaved, my vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall. I'd done it. I'd said it. And now, I was sure, I'd lost him. Jake didn't say anything for what felt like forever. His hand dropped from my arm, and he took a step back, his eyes wide, like I'd just punched him in the gut. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the faint hum of the garage's fluorescent light. "Jake," I started, but my voice cracked, and I couldn't finish. My confession hung in the air, a grenade with the pin pulled. I braced for the explosion: anger, disgust, maybe even a fist. I'd seen what happened when guys in our town got labeled as different. I was ready for anything but what came next. "You're serious?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He wasn't yelling, wasn't backing away further. He just stood there, his brow furrowed, like he was trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. My hands clenched into fists at my sides, waiting for the rejection I'd spent years dreading. But Jake didn't move. He just looked at me, his dark eyes searching mine. And for the first time, I couldn't read him. Not the playful Jake. Not the cocky quarterback. Just Jake. "I didn't know," he said finally, running a hand through his hair. "I mean, shit. Ethan, why didn't you tell me sooner?" I laughed, a bitter sound that echoed in the garage. Tell you, in this town, you think I wanted to be the kid everyone whispers about. The one who gets jumped in the parking lot. Jake flinched, like my words had hit harder than any tackle. You think I'd let that happen to you? He said, his voice low but fierce. You're my best friend. Ethan, I'd have your back. Always. His words were a lifeline, but I couldn't grab it. Not yet. You say that now? I said, my voice shaking. But you don't get it. This isn't just about you having my back. It's about me and you and the fact that I've been in love with you since we were 15. Jake's eyes widened again, and he took another step back, like the weight of my words was too much. You're in love with me, he repeated, his voice cracking. Like, for real. I nodded again, my face burning. I wanted to disappear, to take it all back. But it was too late. The truth was out, raw and exposed, and there was no undoing it. Jake paced a few steps, his hands on his hips, his breathing uneven. I don't know what to say. Man, he said, stopping to face me. I'm straight. You know that. I've never. I know. I cut him off, my voice sharp. I know you're straight. I didn't tell you because I thought you'd feel the same. I told you because I couldn't keep lying to you. To myself. He stared at me, his jaw tight, his eyes a storm of emotions I couldn't untangle. So what now? He asked. What do you want me to do with this? Nothing, I said, my voice barely audible. I just needed you to know. The garage felt smaller, the walls closing in as we stood there, 2 feet and a lifetime apart. I turned to leave, my heart a lead weight in my chest. I'm sorry, I muttered, heading for the door. Ethan, wait, Jake said, his voice urgent. I stopped but didn't turn around. Don't go. Not like this. I closed my eyes, fighting the urge to run. What do you want? Jake, I asked, my back still to him. You want me to pretend I didn't say anything? Because I can't. I don't want you to pretend, he said, and I heard him step closer. I need time. Okay. This is a lot. I turned then, meeting his gaze. His face was a mix of confusion and something else, something softer. Something that made my heart ache. Take all the time you need, I said, but don't expect me to wait forever. I left the garage, the cool autumn air hitting me like a wave. I walked home, my mind replaying every word, every look. I'd done the unthinkable, told Jake the truth, and now I had to live with whatever came next. The next week was torture. Jake didn't avoid me, but he wasn't himself either. His usual playfulness was gone, replaced by a quiet intensity that made my stomach churn. At practice, he'd catch my eye but look away quickly, like he was afraid of what he'd see. I kept my distance, giving him the space he'd asked for. But it felt like losing him all over again. Rumors started swirling at school. Someone had overheard something. Or maybe I hadn't been as careful as I thought. By Wednesday, I caught Tommy Reed and his buddies whispering as I passed in the hall, their smirks sharp as knives. Faggot, one of them muttered, loud enough for me to hear. I kept walking, my fists clenched, but the word burned. Jake saw it happen. He was across the hall, talking to some cheerleader, but his eyes locked on mine as the word hit. For a second, I thought he'd ignore it, pretend he hadn't heard. But then he was there, shoving Tommy against a locker, his voice low and dangerous. Say it again. He dared, his fist inches from Tommy's face. Tommy backed down, muttering something under his breath, and Jake let him go. He turned to me, his eyes blazing. You okay? He asked, his voice softer now. I nodded. But I wasn't okay. I was terrified of the rumors. Of the town. Of what Jake's defense meant. Was he protecting me as a friend? Or was there something more? I didn't know. And the not knowing was killing me. The rumors didn't stop. By Friday, they'd spread like wildfire, fueled by Tommy's crew and their endless need to tear people down. I felt eyes on me everywhere in the cafeteria, in class, even at practice. Whispers followed me like shadows, and I could barely focus on the game plan coach was drilling into us. Jake, though, was a wall. He didn't let anyone near me, shutting down every snide comment with a look or a sharp word. But his protectiveness came with a distance I couldn't bridge. He wasn't avoiding me, but he wasn't the Jake I knew either. No playful shoves, no teasing grins, just a quiet, guarded version of him that made my heart ache. After practice, I lingered in the locker room, hoping to catch him alone. The others cleared out, leaving just the two of us, the air thick with tension. I was at my locker, pretending to organize my bag, when Jake finally spoke. You didn't deserve that shit in the hall, he said, his voice rough. He was sitting on a bench, unlacing his cleats, his head down. Tommy's an asshole. Thanks for stepping in, I said, my voice quiet. But you don't have to fight my battles. He looked up, his eyes fierce. Yeah, I do. You're my best friend. Ethan, I'm not going to let them talk to you like that. His words hit hard, but they weren't enough. I needed more than his loyalty as a friend. I needed to know what he was thinking, what he was feeling. Jake, I said, my voice shaking. What are we doing here? You've barely talked to me since. You know. He stood, crossing the room in 2 strides. I'm trying. Okay, he said, his voice raw. You dropped a bomb on me. Ethan. I'm not. I don't know how to process this. Process what? I snapped, my frustration boiling over. That I'm gay. That I'm in love with you. Or that you're freaked out because you don't know what it means. All of it. He shouted, his hands flying up. I don't know what I'm supposed to feel. You're my best friend. And now I'm questioning everything. I froze, my breath catching. Questioning what? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Jake ran a hand over his face, his eyes tormented. You, he said. Me? Us? I don't know. Ethan. I've never thought about guys like that. But when you said it, when you told me how you feel, it messed me up. Because I don't hate it. And that scares the shit out of me. My heart stopped. I searched his face, looking for a lie, a joke, anything to tell me I'd misheard. But all I saw was Jake raw, vulnerable, and more real than I'd ever seen him. What are you saying? I asked, my voice trembling. I'm saying I don't know, he said, his voice breaking. But I don't want to lose you. And I don't want to pretend this didn't happen. The air between us was electric. Every word a spark. I took a step closer, my heart pounding. Jake, if you're just saying this to make me feel better, I'm not. He cut me off, his voice fierce. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm not lying to you. We stood there, inches apart, the locker room silent except for our breathing. I wanted to reach for him, to close the distance. But I was terrified. Terrified of what it meant. Of what we'd lose if it went wrong. But then Jake moved first, his hand brushing mine. Tentative, like he was testing the waters. Ethan, he whispered, his voice barely audible. What if I'm not as straight as I thought? The words hit me like a tidal wave. I opened my mouth to respond. But before I could, the locker room door swung open. and Coach's voice boomed through the room. "You two still here? Get moving. We're locking up." Jake stepped back, his face flushed, and I felt the moment slip away. We grabbed our bags and left. The cold night air a shock after the heat of the locker room. Neither of us spoke as we walked to the parking lot, but his hand brushed mine again. And this time, he didn't pull away. That night, I lay awake, my mind racing. Jake's words echoed in my head. What if I'm not as straight as I thought? It was more than I'd ever hoped for, but it came with a fear I couldn't shake. What if he was just confused? What if he changed his mind? And what if the town found out? The next day, Jake texted me to meet him at the old quarry, a place we'd gone as kids to skip rocks and talk about nothing. When I got there, he was already waiting, sitting on a boulder, his knees pulled up. He looked up as I approached, his expression a mix of determination and nerves. "I've been thinking," he said, before I could say anything. "About what you said. About us." My heart was in my throat. "And?" I asked, barely breathing. He stood, stepping closer. "I don't know what I'm doing," he admitted, his voice low. "But I know I care about you. More than I should. Maybe. And I want to figure this out. With you." I didn't know what to say. My whole life, I'd been hiding, protecting myself from a world that didn't want me as I was. But here was Jake, my best friend, the guy I'd loved in silence for years, standing in front of me, offering something I'd never dared to dream of. "Okay," I said finally, my voice shaking. "Let's figure it out." The quarry became our sanctuary, away from the town's prying eyes. We could talk, really talk, without the weight of expectations. That first day, we sat on the rocks for hours, the sun dipping below the horizon as Jake opened up in a way he never had before. "I've been freaking out," he admitted, tossing a pebble into the water. "Not just about you, but about me. I've always thought I was one way. You know, girls, dating, the whole deal. But then you said what you said, and it's like, I don't know who I am anymore." I listened, my heart pounding. "You don't have to have it all figured out," I said. "I don't either. I just know how I feel about you." He looked at me then, his eyes soft but intense. "I feel something too," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what it is yet, but it's there." It wasn't a declaration of love, but it was enough. For now, we started meeting at the quarry every weekend, stealing moments away from the team, the school, the town. It was just us, talking about everything, our fears, our dreams, the way the world felt like it was closing in. Jake was still Jake Playful, quick with a joke, but there was a new layer to him, a vulnerability that made my heart ache. At school, we were careful, too careful, maybe. The rumors hadn't died down, and Tommy's crew was relentless, their whispers turning into pointed jabs. Jake shut them down when he could, but I saw the toll it took on him. He was the golden boy, the quarterback everyone loved, and now he was defending the guy everyone was starting to question. One night, after a late practice, Jake pulled me aside in the parking lot. "I'm tired of hiding," he said, his voice low but firm. "I don't know what we are yet, but I'm not ashamed of you. Of us." His words lit something inside me, but they also terrified me. "Jake, you don't know what you're saying," I said. "This town, they'll eat us alive." "Let them try," he said, his jaw set. "I'm not losing you over their bullshit." I wanted to believe him, but fear was a hard habit to break. That night, we drove to the quarry, the stars bright above us. We sat in the bed of his truck, our shoulders brushing, and for the first time, I let myself hope. Maybe this could work. Maybe we could be something more. But hope is a fragile thing in a town like ours. The next day, I found my locker spray painted with a slur. The red paint dripping like blood. Jake was there when I saw it. His face going pale before it hardened into anger. Who did this? He demanded, his voice shaking. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. We both knew it was Tommy and his crew, flexing their power, trying to break me. Jake stormed off, and I knew he was going to confront them. I should have stopped him, but I was too shaken, too humiliated. By lunch, the school was buzzing. Jake had found Tommy in the courtyard and laid into him not with fists, but with words so sharp they cut deeper. You think you're tough? Jake had said, loud enough for everyone to hear, picking on someone for who they are. You're pathetic. Tommy backed down, but the damage was done. The school was divided. Some kids cheered Jake for standing up. Others whispered about him now, too. The golden boy was tainted, and I felt like it was my fault. That night, Jake showed up at my house, his knuckles bruised from punching a wall. I'm done with them, he said, pacing my room. I'm done with this town. I don't care what they think. I wanted to believe him, but the fear was still there, gnawing at me. Jake, this isn't just about you, I said. If we do this, if we're really doing this, it's not just rumors. It's real. People will hate us. He stopped pacing, his eyes locking on mine. I don't care, he said, stepping closer. I care about you. And then he kissed me. It was quick, tentative, like he was afraid he'd break something. But it was everything to spark in the dark, a promise of something more. When he pulled back, his face was flushed, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and wonder. I don't know what I'm doing, he whispered, his forehead against mine. But I want this. I want you. I couldn't speak. I just nodded, my heart racing as I pulled him back in. Our lips meeting again, this time with more certainty. It was messy, imperfect, but it was ours. That kiss changed everything. It was like a door had opened, one we couldn't close even if we wanted to. Jake and I kept meeting at the quarry, stealing moments where we could be ourselves. His kisses grew bolder, his touches less hesitant, and I started to believe we could make this work, despite the odds. But the world doesn't stop turning just because you're in love. At school, the tension was palpable. Jake's confrontation with Tommy had made him a hero to some, a traitor to others. The team was split. Half the guys stood by us. The other half followed Tommy's lead, their glares sharp as knives. Practice became a battlefield. Every missed pass or dropped ball an excuse for Tommy to mutter something under his breath. Jake took it in stride, his jaw set, his eyes daring anyone to cross him. But I could see the strain, the way his shoulders tensed when he thought I wasn't looking. He was fighting for me, for us, but it was costing him. His friends, his reputation, the easy life he'd always had, it was slipping away. And I hated that I was the reason. One night, after a brutal practice, Jake drove us to the quarry. He was quiet, his hands gripping the wheel too tight. What's wrong? I asked, my stomach twisting. He didn't answer right away. He parked the truck, staring out at the water, his jaw working. My dad heard the rumors, he said finally, his voice low. He asked me if they were true. If I was, you know. My heart sank. Jake's dad was old school, a former Marine who didn't talk about feelings and definitely didn't approve of anything that didn't fit his narrow view of the world. What did you tell him? I asked, dreading the answer. I told him the truth, Jake said, his eyes meeting mine. I told him I care about you, that I don't know what it means yet, but I'm not ashamed of it. I stared at him, my breath catching. What did he say? Jake's laugh was bitter. He didn't say much. Just told me to think about my future. About what people would think. I reached for his hand, my fingers lacing through his. I'm sorry, I said, my voice thick. I never wanted to mess up your life. You didn't, he said fiercely, turning to face me. This isn't on you, Ethan. I chose this. I chose you. His words were a lifeline, but they came with a weight I couldn't ignore. What if it's too much? I asked, my voice breaking. What if this town, your dad, the team, what if it breaks us? It won't, he said, his voice steady. I'm not giving up on you. On us. But the cracks were already showing. The next day, Coach pulled us both aside after practice. I don't know what's going on with you two, he said, his voice gruff. But it's affecting the team. Sort it out, or you're both benched. Jake's face was stone, but I could see the anger in his eyes. This isn't about the team, he said. It's about people not minding their own business. Coach's jaw tightened. Watch your tone. Miller, you're the quarterback. Act like it. We left the office in silence, the weight of Coach's words hanging over us. That night, Jake came to my house, his eyes red-rimmed like he'd been crying. My dad kicked me out, he said, his voice flat. Said he needs time to process. I'm staying at my cousin's for now. I pulled him into my room, shutting the door behind us. Jake, I'm so sorry, I said, my heart breaking. This is my fault. Stop it, he said, grabbing my shoulders. This isn't your fault. It's his. It's this town's. I don't regret this. Ethan, I don't regret you. We kissed then, desperate and raw, like we were trying to hold on to something the world was trying to take away. But even as I lost myself in him, I couldn't shake the fear that we were fighting a losing battle. The next week, things got worse. Someone slashed the tires on Jake's truck, leaving a note taped to the windshield. Fags don't belong here. Jake laughed it off, but I saw the hurt in his eyes. He was trying so hard to be strong. For me. For us. But I could feel him slipping. The slashed tires were just the beginning. The hate was emboldened now. No longer just whispers, but acts of cruelty. Jake and I tried to hold on, meeting at the quarry when we could, stealing moments of peace in a world that felt like it was collapsing around us. But the pressure was relentless, and I could see it wearing Jake down, even if he wouldn't admit it. At school, the team was falling apart. Tommy's crew had turned half the guys against us, and practice was a mess of missed plays and cold shoulders. Jake was still the quarterback, but his authority was slipping, his confidence shaken. I hated seeing him like this. The guy who'd always been larger than life reduced to someone fighting just to be seen. One night, after another tense practice, Jake drove us to the quarry. He was quiet, his hands tied on the wheel. When we parked, he didn't get out, just sat there, staring at the dashboard. I don't know how much longer I can do this, he said finally, his voice barely audible. My heart stopped. Do what? I asked, though I already knew. This, he said, gesturing vaguely. The team, the town, my dad, all of it. It's too much. Ethan. I reached for his hand, but he pulled away, his eyes distant. Don't, he said, his voice cracking. I'm not giving up on you. But I'm tired. I'm so fucking tired. I wanted to argue, to tell him we could fight through it. But the words wouldn't come. Because he was right, it was too much. The town, the hate, the constant battle just to exist. I'd been fighting it my whole life. But Jake was new to this war, and I could see it breaking him. I'm sorry, I said, my voice thick. I never wanted this for you. He turned to me then, his eyes wet. Don't be sorry, he said. You're the best thing in my life right now. But I don't know if I'm strong enough for this. We sat in silence, the weight of his words settling over us. For the first time, I let myself imagine a world without him, not just as my best friend, but as the person I'd let myself love. It felt like losing a part of myself. The next day, Jake didn't show up to practice. Coach said he'd called in sick, but I knew better. I texted him, called him, but he didn't answer. Panic clawed at me. And after school, I drove to his cousin's place, my heart in my throat. His cousin answered the door, his expression grim. He's not here, he said. He took off this morning. Said he needed space. Space, I repeated, my voice shaking. Where did he go? I don't know, his cousin said, shrugging. He wouldn't tell me. Just said he'd be back when he was ready. I drove to the quarry, hoping he'd be there. But it was empty. The rocks, the water, the stars, they were all there. But Jake was gone. I sat on our boulder, my chest aching, and let myself cry for the first time in years. I'd lost him, not to the town or the hate, but to his own fear, his own doubts. Days turned into weeks. Jake didn't come back to school, didn't answer my texts. Rumors swirled that he'd left town, that he was staying with relatives somewhere else. The team moved on without him, and I was left to face the hate alone. Tommy's crew didn't let up, but I'd learned to tune them out. I had to, if I was going to survive. But every night, I'd drive to the quarry, hoping to see his truck, hoping he'd come back. He never did. I started to accept that maybe he wasn't coming back, that maybe what we'd had was too fragile to survive the world we lived in. Winter came, and with it, a quiet that felt like defeat. The town moved on, the rumors fading as new scandals took their place. I graduated high school, my diploma a ticket out of a place that had never felt like home. I'd gotten a scholarship to a small college in California, a chance to start over where no one knew my story. The night before I left, I drove to the quarry one last time. The air was crisp, the stars bright against the dark sky. I sat on our boulder, my breath visible in the cold, and let myself remember Jake's laugh, his touch, the way he'd looked at me that night in the locker room when everything changed. I'd heard he was back in town, living with his mom again, but I hadn't seen him. Part of me wanted to find him, to demand answers, but another part knew it wouldn't change anything. We'd been two kids caught in a storm, and we'd done our best to hold on. As I stood to leave, I heard the crunch of gravel behind me. I turned, my heart stopping as Jake stepped into the moonlight. He looked different, thinner, his hair longer, his eyes carrying a weight they hadn't before. Ethan, he said, his voice soft but steady. I heard you were leaving. I nodded, my throat tight. Tomorrow, I said. College. He stepped closer, his hands in his pockets. I'm sorry, he said, his voice breaking. For leaving. For not being strong enough. I wanted to be angry, to yell at him for disappearing. But all I felt was relief. He was here. He was real. Why'd you go? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked away, his jaw tight. I was scared, he admitted, of what I felt, of what it meant. I thought if I left, I could figure it out. But all I did was miss you. My heart ached, but it wasn't the same ache as before. It was softer, bittersweet. I missed you too, I said. But I can't stay here, Jake. Not after everything. I know, he said, his eyes meeting mine. And I'm not asking you to. I needed to see you. To tell you I'm trying. I'm figuring myself out. And maybe one day, he trailed off, his voice thick with emotion. Maybe one day, I echoed, a small smile tugging at my lips. It wasn't a promise, but it was enough. Enough to know he was out there, fighting his own battles, just like I was. We stood there, the quarry quiet around us. And for the first time in months, I felt at peace. We didn't kiss, didn't touch. We didn't need to. What we'd had was real, even if it hadn't lasted. And as I drove away, leaving Jake and the quarry behind, I knew I was carrying a piece of him with me. In California, I found a new life, friends who accepted me, a community where I didn't have to hide. I heard from Jake now and then, texts and calls that grew less frequent but never stopped. He was finding his way, too, coming to terms with who he was in a world that wasn't always kind. Our story didn't end with a grand romance or a fairy tale kiss. It ended with two boys who loved each other, in their own messy, imperfect way, and who carried that love into the lives they built apart. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything.